Welcome to the Pencil Bob channel. I hope you enjoy my stories. Please like and subscribe, and hit that notification icon so you never miss out. Now on with the stories.
Visiting my parents in Florida is always an experience. They've lived in a 55-plus community in Fort Lauderdale for over 20 years, and in that time, they've seen just about everything. Their building alone has over 400 apartments, but for most of the year, only around 100 of them are occupied. The rest belong to Canadians who migrate south during the winter, turning the area into a buzzing hub of activity for just a few months before retreating back north. It's surreal how quickly the place can go from lively to eerily quiet, as if someone flipped a switch and drained all the energy out of it. During the off-season, the community has this strange, deserted feel. You'll walk through the grounds and hear nothing but the rustling of palm fronds and the occasional shuffle of sandals from the handful of year-round residents. It's like living in a postcard that's missing its people. The pool, which is a bustling social hub in the winter, sits empty most days, with a few stray pool noodles floating aimlessly. The shuffleboard courts, once filled with the laughter and arguments of competitive retirees, sit in silence, their markings slowly fading under the relentless Florida sun. And yet, there's something oddly charming about it. The quiet gives the full-timers a sense of ownership over the place that you don't see in the busier months. My parents have made their peace with it, treating the snowbirds' comings and goings like clockwork. They've even developed a kind of seasonal rhythm, enjoying the quieter months and gearing up for the inevitable chaos that comes with the annual migration. For them, it's just another cycle in the life of the community. This time, I arrived in Florida just as a new law had been passed allowing the hunting of invasive species, with iguanas being a major target. If you haven't been to South Florida, it's hard to grasp just how overwhelming the iguana problem has become. These reptiles are everywhere, basking on sidewalks, sprawled across docks, and even taking dramatic plunges into swimming pools as if they own the place. They don't just look out of place, they're a full-blown menace. They're burrowing tiers apart seawalls and foundations. Their droppings make a mess of patios and walkways, and their appetite for landscaping is relentless. Forget about having a neat garden. They'll devour your plants faster than you can replace them. The issue has gotten so bad that you'll see iguanas sunbathing on nearly every canal bank or lazily draped over tree branches like they're the kings of the neighborhood. They're not shy, either. These things will saunter right into your yard, eye your plants, and get to work like they've been invited to a buffet. People have tried everything to control them: traps, repellents, even high-pitched sonic devices. But nothing seemed to put a dent in their ever-growing population. The state finally had enough and decided to open up hunting, but with strict guidelines to keep it controlled and safe. The new regulations meant we could use approved air rifles, which was a smart move because they're effective without being excessively loud or dangerous to the surrounding area. My dad and I were intrigued by the opportunity, especially since it felt like a small way to help with the larger problem. Armed with the proper permissions and air rifles, we were ready to do our part in thinning out the iguana invasion. For us, it wasn't just about the hunt. It was a chance to take on a problem that everyone in the area was tired of dealing with. My dad and I made sure to follow all the proper steps with the local authorities. We called in, got the approvals we needed, and double-checked the regulations before heading out to the canal near their building. Everything was squared away, and we were ready to do our part in tackling the iguana problem. It felt good knowing we were helping out, especially in a way that was both legal and appreciated by the community. Well, most of it anyway. For my dad, this was right up his alley. He thrives on projects like this, where he can roll up his sleeves and take action. Watching him get everything ready, setting up the air rifle, scanning the area, it was clear how much he enjoyed it. For me, the hunt itself was secondary to the time we were spending together. It felt like a rare opportunity to bond, the kind that doesn't come along often as we both get older. Honestly, just seeing how much he lit up with excitement made the whole experience worth it. We were about 30 minutes into our rounds along the canal when she appeared, barreling toward us like a storm. She came from the pool area, wrapped in a towel that looked like it was one wrong move away from falling off completely. Her flip-flops slapped against the pavement with each hurried step, and the enormous floppy sun hat perched on her head was tilted at such an angle it looked like it might take flight. She was a spectacle, to say the least, but her expression of absolute fury stole the show. Before we could even process what was happening, she launched into a tirade, yelling about how we were making too much noise, and ruining the peace of the community. Her voice was so shrill it felt like it could cut through concrete, and her gestures were wild enough to rival a traffic director in a windstorm. It was clear she was gearing up for an all-out meltdown, her words tumbling out faster than her brain could organize them. The whole scene was surreal, this over-the-top outburst from someone who looked like they just stepped out of a chaotic beachside comedy sketch. "I'm on the HOA board," she bellowed, jabbing her finger toward us like she was trying to cast some kind of spell. Her towel slipped a little, but she was too caught up in her rant to notice. "You can't just come here and do whatever you want. This is illegal trespassing, and I'm calling the police. Right now." Her voice cracked slightly, but the fury in her eyes didn't waver. It was as if she thought her title alone carried the weight of the law. My dad didn't even flinch. Cool as ever, he let out a chuckle that seemed to infuriate her even more. "Go ahead," he said casually, adjusting his stance as if he had all the time in the world. "We've already called them. They know we're here. We're not doing anything illegal. And I've been living here for 2 decades, lady. You're not telling me anything I don't already know." His calm tone was like throwing gasoline on her fire. She blinked, momentarily thrown off but clearly not ready to back down. "We'll see about that," she screeched, her voice reaching an impressive pitch. "You think you're above the rules? You think the HOA won't deal with this? I'll make sure you're fined." "Oh," my dad interrupted her mid-rant with a wave of his hand. "You're wasting your breath. We're following all the rules, and your little power trip isn't going to change that." He motioned toward the canal with a grin. "Now, if you'll excuse us, we've got iguanas to hunt. Maybe go back to your pool before that towel gives up on you." Her mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water, clearly at a loss for words but too stubborn to let it end there. Her face went red, and she started spluttering something about how this was her community, and she wouldn't stand for such a disturbance. But we ignored her. We had the proper permissions, and frankly, we weren't going to let her tantrum ruin our day. We moved further down the canal, bagging a few more iguanas. About 20 minutes later, we heard it. Sirens. Not just one patrol car, but multiple. I turned to my dad, and he gave me this look like, "Here we go." We set our air rifles down and waited, watching as the sirens grew louder. When the police finally arrived, we were surprised to see an ambulance pulling in right behind them, its lights flashing. My dad and I exchanged a confused look. "What's all this about?" I whispered, but he just shrugged, his expression calm as ever. The officers approached us cautiously, one of them glancing at our gear. "We got a report of an active shooter," the lead officer said, his tone firm. My dad stepped forward, his hands relaxed at his sides. "Not exactly," he said with a small smile. "We're hunting iguanas, completely legal. We called it in ahead of time, and the authorities gave us the go-ahead. We're using air rifles and staying within all the regulations." He motioned toward the pile of iguanas. "You can check with your dispatch. We've got nothing to hide." One of the officers stepped aside to verify our story while another inspected the air rifles in our haul. After a moment, the lead officer nodded. "Everything checks out. Looks like you're doing good work out here." He even cracked a small smile. "Next time, though, maybe keep an eye out for nosy neighbors causing trouble." "Good work," he said, snapping a photo of the iguanas we'd collected. "This is exactly what we need more of around here." But then the story took a ridiculous turn. It turned out that the irate woman hadn't just called the police, she'd contacted another district entirely. And she hadn't just reported a disturbance, she'd claimed there was an active shooter in the area. That's why the response was so massive. She had practically mobilized an emergency response unit over a couple of guys hunting iguanas with air rifles. The officers weren't amused. They walked over to her, where she was pacing near the pool, still clutching her towel and looking smug. But her smugness didn't last long. The cops laid into her, explaining that her actions were not only unnecessary but dangerous. Making a false report, especially one involving firearms, was a serious offense. They handed her a citation right then and there. "You have no authority to stop anyone from hunting here," one officer told her firmly. "The canals and waterways are under Florida state jurisdiction, and air rifles are specifically allowed because they're not disruptive. If you had a problem, you should have contacted the appropriate authorities instead of making a scene." Her face turned an even deeper shade of red, and for a moment, I honestly thought she might explode right then and there. But, this is my community," she sputtered, her voice rising higher with every word. "I'm on the HOA board. I have a responsibility to the residents. You can't just come in here and do whatever you want. This isn't your property. This isn't your neighborhood. She waved her arms around dramatically, as if trying to physically push us out of the area. I could see the veins in her neck popping out as she worked herself up into a full meltdown. I'm the one who keeps this place running smoothly. People like you, just walking around with guns, ruining the peace. This is my job, my duty to protect the integrity of the community. She was practically shaking now, her towel slipping down further with each frantic gesture. You think you could just walk in here and ignore all the rules? I won't let you get away with this. Ma'am, the officer replied, cutting her off. You're a temporary resident. You don't have the authority to enforce anything, especially when it comes to state regulations. Next time, leave it to law enforcement. My dad was having the time of his life watching this unfold. He leaned over to me and whispered, I haven't had this much fun in years. I could see why. The woman was practically vibrating with rage, her hands clenching and unclenching as the reality of the situation sank in. The officers wrapped things up, advising her to avoid confrontations with anyone carrying firearms in the future, air rifles or not. They made it clear she could have put herself and others in danger with her antics. She stormed off, muttering under her breath, and stomped back to the pool area, her towel trailing behind her like a defeated flag. As the police left, one of the officers gave us a nod. Keep up the good work, he said. We need all the help we can get with these iguanas. We ended the day with a tally of 32 iguanas over the course of 2 days. My dad was absolutely thrilled, practically glowing with excitement. He couldn't stop laughing about the HOA lady's meltdown, replaying the scene in his head over and over. She thought she was going to scare us off, he said, shaking his head, still chuckling to himself. Guess she learned the hard way. Huh? Thought she could just strut up here, throw her weight around, and we'd back down. Classic. He wiped a tear from his eye, still laughing as he set down his rifle. I mean, she really thought she had us. I've been living here for years, and she's just some temporary resident who thinks she can call the shots. Didn't even have the sense to check with anyone before making a scene. He shook his head again, clearly enjoying every bit of the situation. But knowing her type, I seriously doubt she learned anything at all. People like her never do. I could already picture her back at the pool, muttering to herself about how unfair it all was, probably plotting her next move to try and flex her non-existent authority. Be careful with Canadians. Behind all their politeness and laid-back charm lies a surprising history. Their reputation for being kind and friendly might make you forget that they've played a significant role in shaping global rules of conduct. In fact, the Geneva Convention's rules of warfare owe much to Canadian influence, ensuring that even in the chaos of war, certain standards are upheld. It's a clear example of their commitment to fairness and humanity, but also a reminder not to underestimate them. Canadians might seem easygoing, but they know how to make an impact when it counts. Canadians actually did a couple of bomb things, including inventing the creeping barrage. The goal of the creeping barrage was to create a line of shellfire just in front of the Canadian troops and then keep it moving forward like a shield so that the soldiers could move behind it, across the battlefield. Other soldiers thought it was too dangerous and risky, but the Canadians did it with gusto. I suspect many of the HOA board types are about power and control. I received citations for having a joke sticker inside my single-family home. As part of his inside joke, someone gave me a "Hail Satan" sticker or card. Forgot which one. I had it in my office, on my desk, next to my computer, near the window. My desk is near the window, but not in front of it. A neighbor's roof-mounted security cam captured the sticker or card, sent an image to HOA, and I received a notice to immediately remove it. But that's not where it ends. Since then there is an ongoing rumor going around my neighborhood that I worship the devil. Plus the very religious HOA's president has been harassing me about everything like my having unofficial mulch when we don't have any mulch policy or requirement or official mulch. The HOA president has been acting forceful like he's my daddy and I've been a very bad kid who needs his discipline. It's creepy.
I would like to thank you for watching the video to the end. To encourage us to make more videos, please like, subscribe, comment, as well as share. Check out this other video if you haven't already.